We are here to talk about transformation of the media agency. So we're going to focus more on how the media agency has transformed over the past few years, what have been some of the reasons for that change, and also where the media agencies are going in the future. But given that we're here to talk about transformation, I thought it would be best for Esther to kind of start off talking about the transformation that AT&T has had, and then talk more about how the media agency fits into that.
Sure. So I joined AT&T, let's see, in 2009. And at that time, our chairman had been on board about 3 years, Randall Stevenson. In 2006, he decided to rename this kind of acquisition of 13 companies, rename it AT&T. In 2007, we launched the first iPhone, and that really started this amazing transformation for the company in going from a traditional phone company to really today what I would argue is a technology and an innovation company. And it's not just going from 2G to 3G, 4G, LTE technology. It really is about going from, you know, making phone calls to holding your life in the palm of your hand. And it's things like how we are working with all sorts of ecosystems to move the auto industry forward, or the healthcare industry, or the education system, and so forth. So, and we're really privileged as we work on these in these industries to actually sit kind of, I like to say, at the center of the ecosystem, because a lot of our technology and our platforms enable everything to be interoperable. So that's how you create this more seamless world, if you will. So that's been a huge transformation for us. As a marketer, we launched a campaign called Rethink Possible. I think it's 4 years ago now. And so if you think about that as a kind of a brand imperative, it really puts a high bar on how we go to market as well. Yes, we're helping to drive some of the future, but how do we do that also in the way we engage our customers? So.
And given all that dynamic transformation and your point about a high bar, it really raises the bar for the media agencies and what they need to deliver for you. So can you talk a little bit about some of the changes that you've seen just in the past few years, kind of rising to that occasion, actually?
Sure. So the first is, you know, the business, the industry, everybody's feeling this, I'm sure, moves so fast that we can't afford not to have all of the critical thinkers at the table at once. So I know most marketers, this is old news, but you know, that's as step one. I think step two, and very critically important, and you guys have really stepped up here, is the analytical side of the business. So, and this is not just analytics around communications, it's really about the business. So there's lots of room to still build capability, but I think everything from, you know, really not looking at, you know, clicks anymore and really looking at business, also being able to take a journey and understand where the attribution is coming from, and looking to kind of this more omni-channel attribution. These are all things that I know we're working on that are going to be critically important to us to make sure that we're spending the money properly. I think that's such a stronghold for the media companies, this whole area of analytics. You sit at the center of an ecosystem of tools. You have all these data pools. You have the trust of your client, and oftentimes some of our data, and you also have this relationship with the media owners. So you put that all together in service to, as Kim Cadlick on the video talked about, real-time marketing. So I think that's such a unique role for media companies. And then the other thing that I would add is the area of content, which a lot of people have talked about. Everybody is doing content. You know, clients are doing content, creative agencies are doing content. There are content players coming out of, you know, everywhere approaching us. Even consumers are doing their own content, right? And I think that the unique place that media companies have is, again, the relationship with the media owners. And how do you, whether it's provide second screen experiences, or one of the things that was really helpful for us, we have a campaign called It Can Wait to help really discourage texting and driving. And one of the things that we worked on with MEC was since we target mostly teenagers who are new drivers, invincible, and big texters, we buy a lot of youth networks as well. And you guys actually approached these youth networks and were able to negotiate celebrities on those networks to do PSAs and to do some appearances for us and things like that. So there's lots and lots of ways to actually leverage that. And I'm wondering whether media companies do enough with the stuff that they actually have.
Well, you bring up a good point, which is about how do we leverage the platforms that exist more in a very dynamic way. And I'm happy that you're bringing this up, because I think that if you think back to media agencies, and I've been in media agency for many, many years, started in traditional advertising. I call it the left brain creativity side, right? So we were more focused on kind of the numbers and what we need to put out. And now we're more into this balance with right brain creativity and what we need to bring to life and content. But it's also an opportunity to leverage those existing partnerships. And there's a lot of media owners out here right now, and we don't have to create everything, but we have to create something new and unique, bringing that partnership to life. Yeah. And so we have many examples in terms of things that we've done on AT&T where we've brought that to life.
And I think what's interesting is that the whole area of content is going to get more robust, more complex, more layered before we actually figure out what works best for each of our brands. And there's a lot of experimentation going on right now, a lot of really welcome experimentation. We're all trying to figure out, not just, there's lots of discussion around marketing is no longer just, selling stuff, and it's not even just storytelling. A lot of it is around value exchange, and that's not the first time we've heard that term. And that exchange takes place in different ways, and content is a big part of that. So whether it's instructional content, something that really matters to me, or something that's entertaining, there's lots of different ways to think about content.
Yeah, and yesterday in the content panel, they talked about you still need to get those ideas and that content distributed, and that's also a place where a media partner can really help with that.
Absolutely.
So one of the challenges to deliver against all of this is collaboration. And we heard Dana Anderson talk in a very fun way yesterday all about collaboration and how people need to be more giving. But tell us some of the ways that media agencies can be better from a collaboration standpoint and be more involved and integrated up front in the process.
So I have a little bit of a counter view on that, because collaboration is so important, especially as a concept. But in reality, collaboration, I think, is kind of flabby. And what I mean by that is nobody needs another meeting. So I get asked to collaborate on many things, and there's just too many people in the room. I'm sure all of you feel that. You go to a room and you're collaborating, and there's just way too many man-hours sitting in that room. And I think to some degree, the collaboration needs to turn to something that's more convergent. And at the same time, we need to really figure out where are the roles different and how do we divide and conquer. So as a concept, I'm all for collaboration. We do this all the time within our own four walls, but we're so large, we move so fast, that what we find oftentimes is that we just don't have time for another meeting. So how are you going to create the right structure for really purposeful collaboration that delivers results?
And a lot of that is, as we say, walking the halls. It's actually being part of your client's business and being very present in terms of what you need to be doing to deliver on the day-to-day.
Yeah.
So to that point, given the overwhelming dynamic of where things are going and just the challenges of just managing your day and even your inbox, Esther and I had been talking last week about filter failure. So can you talk a little bit more about filter failure and what the impact is and how we as a media agency and as a partner really help you get through that?
Yeah. So I was talking to Marla about this because we do a lot of kind of where is human behavior going with technology change. And there's a writer, Clay Shirky, who wrote a book, Here Comes Everybody. And it was about the human impact of internet technologies. And he said, what we're experiencing right now is filter failure. And I think that's true for probably everybody in this room. It's certainly true for marketers, that you just have too much coming at you at the same time. And I think that part of what has been great about our partnership is that you often take the lead for knowing what's the next. So we did a field trip out to Silicon Valley and met with some of the VCs and really got to experience what were some of the more important things to be aware of. So one company, for example, quantified that's now doing some work with us to really quantify how social media impacts business results, as an example. So we're still working with them to kind of figure some things out. But it's really tough, and everybody wants to get on your calendar, and everybody wants a little bit of your time, and it's very tough in the days that we have when there's no more time for another meeting to meet all these people. What's been really great is you guys kind of sit at the tip of the spear, if you will, and really help us kind of wind our way through some of these new emerging, whether it's agencies like Vice that's now doing our millennial marketing, and they're not really even an agency, you know, content partner and. So I think that's an important role for you as well, because you're out there, you have to know what's going on, you have to aggregate all of it and sort through it, and we just don't have the time.
And a lot of that is based on trust. So the great thing is that we have your trust to actually be filtering through that and making that happen, and kind of gets into the concept that we were discussing about that dream team and how you pull that together. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about that as well.
So this actually came from another CMO that I was having a conversation with, and she was talking about how she looks to create a dream team, and kind of that's who she works with. And what's interesting about Dream Team is it's always changing. So we have kind of this way of, you have to open up to actually evaluate new partners, and then you have to shut down in order to then go work and drive. You know, we have big partnerships with people like MEC, BBDO, Interbrand, the marketing arm, and others that are our main partners, but then we bring in others as part of this kind of who's this year's dream team. And I think that it's important to always look for new capabilities, but to very quickly start to work together so that you can drive results. We could spend all our time just meeting agencies and we'd get nowhere, and that's part of the challenge.
So how can media agencies continue to evolve to meet the changing dynamic needs that are happening, not just on your business, but for marketers out there?
So one thing I would say, and a lot of you are already doing this, is I think it's really important to think about your partnership with your client as not to solve a media problem or an advertising problem or a communications problem or even an integrated communications problem. It really is a business problem. And many of you, as I said, are already doing that. But one of the very small examples, there's many that I can't talk about or probably shouldn't talk about, but one that's a small example is we were working with MEC and Google and realizing that there was a realization that in search on Google, when people searched for customer experience, a large percentage of those queries were about AT&T. It's like, oh my gosh. These people want to understand how to, interact with us, and this is how they're searching for the information. So we were able to actually create content, explanatory content, whether it be about, how to, start up your account or how to switch something out or whatever the case may be, and be able to, based on the query, serve, a link to a video that actually reduced a lot of these needs to actually then follow up with customer service, and it actually created what I would say more satisfied customers. So that's an example of solving a business problem, not just a communications problem.
And it's a great way of demonstrating that the media agencies sit on information and insights and data that can be leveraged in very different ways, not just in developing a media plan or a media strategy.
Absolutely.
So that is very helpful when we think about where media agencies need to continue to push as it relates to the future and what those opportunities are. Do you want to talk a little bit more about data and what the opportunity is there? Because you talked about it a little bit earlier, but it is a very unique place for the media agencies. And I know going way back, early on, I was always invited to modeling meetings, and you would really understand the business. And as you and I were talking, the media agency does have a more unique lens on kind of the broader aspects of the business to truly apply that thinking.
Yeah. So I would say, and we're probably not alone in this, a lot of marketing kind of econometric models are, they're regression analysis, they're backward looking, they're not real time. And I think that how do we take the data that we have, the algorithms, the analytics. How do we actually get to a point now where it is more real time and we can make smarter decisions about where we're placing our dollars? So I think that there's huge opportunity there. I know a lot of people are working on it. It is the holy grail. We're not there yet. But I do think this is a unique area, as I said before, for the media companies and the ecosystem of analytics groups. Now, we have our own analytics group internally, but we don't have the same relationship with the media owners where we translate that immediately to a buy. There's a lot of discussion around programmatic buying. Very interesting. I think that in concept, I'm 100% there. We're obviously doing some of it already. But how do we actually free up our time to actually focus on other more critical things in our business? I will say one side note to that, which we also talked about, is we can't just give up our brand to programmatic buying either. So we have to still think about, what are the right environments, the right image, the right associations for our brand. But I do think that more and more of this business is going to get smarter in terms of being able to be doing things on our behalf as opposed to us manually and physically getting in there and making all these decisions.
And you've just highlighted a key aspect of the future for where media agencies are going. Can you talk about what you would like to see the media agency evolve to in the future to really help you as a marketer?
So one thing that I wonder about a lot is, and we all struggle with this, it's what we talked about with collaboration. And I know there's been discussions around the future of the agency is to reconverge into a total, communications company or engagement company or whatever. I think where you're starting from, that's very tough because there are big, separate, everything has been set up in such a way where you're very focused on your areas, and to now try to combine those, I don't know how that would ever really get done. But what I worry about is that for many of the agencies is there are other companies, smaller and mid-sized, that are doing that. And we struggle with, as a large client, how do we get scale, but how do we at the same time get agility? And so one of the things I'm wondering is, how do you actually drive more convergence with the creative side of the needs? Because I do think that there needs to be more coming together of those. So that's just one example. The other thing that I also think is really important for media companies to think about is, how do you manage the old and the new? So if I take the example of MEC, a lot of where the revenue comes from is traditional television buying. And we buy a lot of television, so that's great. But we also need to start focusing more and more on these emerging areas. And so how do you start to reprioritize? The example I would use is, as a technology and an infrastructure company, we've gone from old TDM technology to IP. And that's had, revenue implications when you have the stuff in the ground and you're actually making money off of it, and now you have to look to retiring it and building new things. It costs money, and yet you have to follow where the puck is going, because otherwise you're going to be outdated. Somebody else is going to come in and do it better than you are. And so I think that's one of the things that I also really feel is important for the media companies in the future, to figure out how you're going to reprioritize where the puck is going, even though the traditional stuff is really important and drives a lot of revenue.
All right, thank you. That's been very helpful. I hope it's been helpful to all of you. So some key watch outs for the future: data, programmatic, you heard collaboration and thinking about integration. I think agility is another key focus. And again, being a client's not just their media partner, but their true business partner. So thank you, Esther. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.